Good morning everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today's video is going to be about canning chicken. So I bought bulk chicken through the meat online order, and I ended up with a lot of thighs. Some of them were supposed to be skin on thighs that we were going to use for meals, you know, fried with the crispy skin and things like that, but they all turned up skinless, which is fine, except that I have to get them out of my freezer. I can't store that much in the freezer, especially not when I'm going to go shopping soon. 3 weeks, I think. So what I want to do is I want to can some. Now, I've canned chicken plenty of different ways. We do a lot in soups. We can it with vegetables in stock and things like that for eating over the winter, and I will do some of that later, but that's not today's plan. The other main thing we do is what they call ugly chicken, which is basically just raw chicken packed into jars. They're processed, and the chicken creates its own liquid, and then you can add a bit of salt, and it creates its own liquid, and then you've got basically just shredded chicken in a jar. It's fairly bland. It's shredded, so it just falls apart. But it's perfectly fine for like mixing with mayo and making chicken salad for sandwiches and stuff, which is a very American thing, but something that we have done with it. Or for just tipping a whole jar, draining it, tipping a jar into a hot pan and frying it up, and it ends up being like crispy shredded chicken, or throwing into pasta or into soup and things like that, and it's perfectly fine for that. The first few times we ever canned it, it was a bit strange. You open it up and it's got a bit of an odd smell because it's canned chicken. And initially it kind of tastes a little bit like tuna. It's weird. I think partly because the texture of it's a little bit like that. But anyway, we enjoy having it. We also enjoy doing pork the same way. But it does come out just the one way. Just this sort of shredded, a fairly bland chicken that you can only use in those few sort of ways. It's still versatile, but just not quite as versatile as like when I marinate and then freeze chicken. So the thing that we're going to do today is we're going to do it a few different ways. We're going to do some just plain like that, straight in jars, raw packed like that. And then I'm going to try a couple of jars done where I'm going to marinate the whole thighs in the cowboy candy style marinade that I normally do, and then we're going to fry it off very briefly just to seal the outside edges, and then can it in whole thighs. And I'm going to do some sliced up the same way. So we're going to stick with that one marinade for this batch. I've got 9 kilos out, I think it is. So we're going to do those 9 kilos, which will end up being up to 9-ish jars. It really depends on how we cram it in there. And I'd imagine that the cooked chicken doesn't fit quite as much in a jar as the raw chicken because you can't pack it in there as far. So I'm going to use some Fowler's Ricola jars. I'll use the 31s, which I think are 850 mils, so not quite a quart, more than a pint. And we're just going to get through that. So first up, I'm going to throw some in the marinade so that they can sit there and do that while I pack the raw pack stuff into some jars too. So we've got the big 5 kilo pack here and then 2 of the 2 kilo packs. There's not much difference. It just happened to be whatever was easiest reach in the freezer at the time when I pulled them out to defrost, and they're all mostly defrosted. There's a few bits of ice crystals in some of them, but they're pretty much defrosted. So I got a bowl here. So I might do like the 4 kilos, the 2 kilo bags in the marinade, and then we'll leave this sealed, and we'll come back and we'll do that one just plain. We know we like the plain chicken, so the marinated ones are going to be a bit of a trial. So I don't want to do too much, but I want to do enough to get an idea. So let me grab my knife. All right, so we will just double check them for bones and then place some of these whole ones in the bowl as is. Because we're going to try some whole. So what have we got? We got 3, 4, 5. They're all different sizes, so it's not going to be much of a good judgment of how much, but this is 2 kilos worth. So if we put the 2 kilos in as is, all these seem to have that chunk of bone that sometimes is in them missing. There's some smaller pieces in the bag as well. All right, so that 2 kilos, and then we got the other 2 kilos, and we'll slice this one up. And then that way we can try marinated in the strips and marinated in there. And so the strips I might do raw too. So then we've also got a comparison of it marinated fried off slightly in the bigger pieces, or marinated but raw in the smaller pieces, and we'll see how that compares. Or I could possibly I might cook off a few of the bits of the sliced ones, because I'm going to have the pan on for the bigger thighs anyway, and then I can do a comparison like that too. This is all about doing smaller, like we're just going to do a can load or two of all these things and see which ones we prefer, to see if we've got other options in the thing. There's also meals that can be made with the chicken as well, rather than just doing it plain. But it is really nice to have somewhat plain chicken on the shelf, and which is why we just do the salted stuff. But the marinade that I normally use, the cowboy candy marinade, we pretty much use with just about everything. So it's a very versatile one for us. I'm just not sure how it's going to can because of the sugar in the cowboy candy and things like that. But we're not going to can it in the marinade. We're just going to marinate it, grill it slightly, and then can it, though I will do a trial of some that haven't been grilled just to see. I have gravy beef in the fridge that needs to be done something with this week as well, and that I'm going to can up in as a birria base. That's what we're going to give a go with that, so that should be interesting. This thigh has a bone in it. Alright, so we've got that. I'm just going to clean up a little bit here and get rid of some of the chicken juice. Alright, so I've got the liquid brine from the cowboy candy, so I'm going to put some on each of the chicken, same way I normally would. Then we're going to add some garlic powder. Again, same as normal, not really measuring. We don't want to overdo it because we're canning it, and canning can make seasonings stronger, the flavour of them, because of the process. So we're going to go fairly light on these things, but remember we got 2 kilos of chicken in each, so we've done that, and I'm going to put a little bit of salt. My salt jar got wet in the rain, and a little bit of pepper. Again, a little bit light on the seasoning because the canning can intensify it. Alright, and then I'm just going to get these all covered, and then I'm going to put these aside and get the jars out for the plain stuff. Let this just sit for a little bit, and then we'll grill it off before getting it in the jars. Alright, so I've washed some jars. Now these are the Fowler's 31s, and as I said, I'm pretty sure they're 850, 950 mils. They're under a quart, but more than a pint. And this is what I like to can chicken in because of the nice wide mouth. So it's easy to get the chicken in and out of. And it's just a good size. I do have 36s as well, which are 1.2 litres, same width, but they're taller. I use a lot of them for soups. These for just plain meat, the other one for soups, generally speaking. Now, I washed my jars, warm soapy water. You do not have to sterilize your jars if you are going to be processing something for more than 10 minutes. So I did not sterilize these, just warm soapy water. And I did the lids as well. So these are the lids for these jars, 4-inch lids for these jars. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pack these jars with the chicken thighs. Now I am going to quickly check the thighs for bones and gristle, just because I want to, because it's easier rather than having it in the stuff once you've done it. And then I'm just going to pack the jars. So you want to pack your jars, when you're raw packing, you want to pack them really nice and tight because the chicken shrinks. So if you don't pack them tight enough, when it's processed, your jars will end up with too much headspace. So you want to overfill, like not overfill, but you want to pack your jars really nice and tight when you're raw packing to make sure that there is plenty of chicken in there by the end. So we take it all the way, and we take it all the way up to the rim. You've got sort of like a scant inch headspace because you're going to end up with less headspace. And then we're going to put a bit of salt. Now, Sonnet, can you grab me a teaspoon or something? You could salt these before you stack them in there. All I'm going to do is I'm going to get Sonnet to put a teaspoon of salt just here underneath this top one, and it'll permeate the whole lot because, as I said, that creates their own juices. So that's all we do, is just fill the jars with chicken and then process it. So that's why it's such a super simple thing to do. Salt is just over here. Yeah. Can you just put a teaspoon of salt in there? Not a tablespoon, a teaspoon. That one. That one, yep. Teaspoon of salt in the top for me. Just like that. And then I'm just going to stack that last piece in there, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm just going to fill each of the jars the same way. All right, so that was the 5 kilo bag, and this one's a little short. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some from the jars that were a little firmer packed, and make them all sort of evenly packed. So they all have approximately a kilo of chicken in each one. You know, wash that teaspoon before you stick it back in the salt because you just touched the chicken with it. So about a kilo per 31 jars. So now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean the rims on these, and what I'll probably do is I'll get these going in the Presto while I fry off the other chicken to go in to the next lot, because these 5 will easily fit in the Presto. Get that done out of the way. So let me just grab some vinegar to clean the rims and stuff. All right, so I've got some white vinegar here, and I'm just going to clean the rims of my jars, and then I will grab some rings out. Sonnet's getting the canner sorted for me, so she's going to put it up on the stovetop, put 3 quarts of water in the bottom of it, the Presto. That rack won't fit in that canner. You need one of the ones with the bigger holes in it. So she's going to put a rack in there, put 3 quarts of water in it for me. Now I need rings, and we need size 4 rings for size 4-inch lid jars. So we're just going to place the rings on each jar, making sure that there's no twists in them. Some people prefer to put the rings on before they fill their jars. I always do it afterwards. It's just how I've always done it. So we make sure there's no twists on them, in them. Get them all lined up. Now these rings are basically the silicone that's on the inside of like a ball mason lid that creates the seal. So this is what creates the seal. So it needs to be snug in its little slot and not twisted. Now I run a bit of vinegar around them as well, just because I've then just used my fingers on them. So just in case there's any grease or food or anything on my fingers, I like to just do that. And then with the lids, do the same thing. These have been washed in warm soapy water, but I tend to just quickly run the cloth with the vinegar around them just to make sure. We want these jars to work, and so in doing that we want to give it the best opportunity to work. So could you put some water in that for me? So 3 quart jars of water. 3 of these is fine. Yeah, from the tap's fine. All right, so we got those on. Now we need to put the clips on them. So like the rings for my Fowler's jars, my clips always look a bit grubby. It's just the way it is. They get stored in a container, but it's fine. I like to double clip my Fowler's jars. Some people swear that you shouldn't. When I am pressure canning with my Fowler's jars though, I find that I will have fails if I do not double clip them. And considering that Fowler's doesn't even have guidelines for pressure canning with their jars, I sort of sit there and go, well, the whole don't double clip is a bit irrelevant too. I also, because most of my stuff was bought secondhand, and because it looks like this, you can't see the numbers on the clips or anything, and there's different size clips for different purposes. So these are 4-inch clips theoretically, except that 4-inch clips for glass lids is different to a 4-inch clip for a steel lid. So there's potential there for some variations in the sizing of the clips, and so I find that 2 is a good thing. Some have these higher lip points on them than others, which I think are the glass ones. So anyway, I always double clip my pressure can jars, and I find that it works really well for me. So there we go, we've got those 5 done. So Sonnet's put 3 quarts of water in the bottom of the Presto. These jars are cold, so the water in the Presto is cold as well. So we're going to put these straight in, and then we're going to turn the canner on and slowly bring it up to pressure, because we don't want to do any shock to these jars. So no quick temperature changes. And then these are canned for, I want to say 90 minutes. So I'm going to get these in the canner. All right, so I've got the Presto going on, warming up nice and slowly, and on this back burner here. So we'll take it up at a low temperature increase so that we don't shock any of those jars, no siphoning, things like that. I got these 2 cast iron pans heating up. We want them really nice and hot because we're not actually cooking this chicken. We're just going to sear it on each side, seal the outside edges, but we want to keep all the juices in there. So we're just going to sear it. Grilled it would be great, except I just don't have a grill plate. And then the plan is to get it straight in jars pretty much. So we're going to just move it from slightly grilled, shoved into jars, and then we're going to process it. As I said, I think I'll end up with less chicken per jar when it's cooked, because you don't want to push it down as much, so we will see how we go. So getting the oil nice and hot before adding it, because yeah, we don't want to cook it all the way through. We just want to seal some of that marinade onto the outside edges and into the, try to retain some of the texture. So all right, so that's the 2 kilos. We're just going to cook it a couple of minutes each side, and then we're going to shove it in a jar, and theoretically it should only fit sort of 2 jars worth. Definitely think I'd prefer this if I could do it like over flame on a charcoal grill, just to get that really quick sear on the outside without too much heat going through it. Putting it in pans like this, even when they're hot, it still tends to stew a little bit in that marinade, which is fine. We want the moisture, and we're looking to not overcook it. But I do think that a quick grill on a charcoal grill over flame would work really well for this. So I've just flipped them. I've let it seal one side. I've just flipped them, give it a minute, and then I'm just going to shove it in jars, and we're just going to see how this goes. All right, so both sides have a seal on it, and that's all I'm looking for, because the theory is that it holds its texture better because the outside has been seared slightly. So all we're going to do now is put them straight in these jars, and then I'm going to get these pans back up, and I'm going to fry off the pieces as well. And as I thought, it's not going to fit as much chicken per jar because it's cooked, because I can't shove it in there quite as tight as I would have. Well, I could, but then I'm impacting. The whole point of doing this is to try and keep some of the texture, and if I'm shoving it in there, then that's not going to do what I need it to do, is it? So I will just top this one up with some of the bigger pieces of so this is the sliced up stuff, and I'm just going to add it to the 2 pans as well, and we're going to see how many we fit. I think I'm going to need a couple more jars actually. I only washed the 8 and one that didn't, that was the wrong size. So while this is quickly getting a skin on it, I'm going to grab another jar or 2. I grabbed a few extra jars, and I'm just going to top this one up. Obviously I'm going to have to clean the rims of these jars really well, because the chicken is touching them and all the marinade and stuff. But what we want to do is we want to get as much of the juice of the chicken in here as well, so that everything that gets canned in here stays moist. Now you can add chicken stock or water or whatever you want when you can your chicken. Totally fine. I prefer not to unless I'm making a soup, and then we add stock. But if I'm canning meat on its own, I prefer to raw pack or close to raw pack, and just let it create its own juices. I find that that's tastier. Now, ideally, I would have done this in more pans slower, so that the chicken got that really hot crust on it without cooking too much, which is why the charcoal grill up at really hot would work. But we're working with what we've got, and we're just testing it out. So we're just going to fill the jars with the pieces as well. Straight out of the pan, all the juices. And this is where we may run into problems, because the juices include that cowboy candy marinade. And there's just that issue that because there's sugar in the cowboy candy marinade, that it might burn a little bit in processing. All right, now remember that this isn't cooked all the way through, so it will shrink. So you need to get the jars well packed so that there's not an excessive headspace once it's processed. And we have managed to fit that 4 kilos into 5 jars because of the slightly different makeup of the chicken. Can't jam it in as much. All right, so now we're going to clean the rims of these jars really well with the vinegar, because I've well and truly slopped meat and grease and stuff on them, so we want them really nice and clean. Using a clean bit of the cloth for each one so that I don't get any bits of the residue stuck, and making sure to clean the little divot that the rubber seal goes into as well. And then I'm going to put the rings on it like the other batch, and I'll get my other canner going as well, and then we'll run them both, and I'll just set my timer for each canner slightly separately, because the other one will be slightly ahead of this one. All right, so let's get the rings on. Now we'll get clips on these like the other ones. And now the canner that we do for this one, we're going to start with warm water because the jars are warm. So you always want to start with the same temperature water in the canner as the temperature of the product in the jars, and that's how you avoid the issues with thermal shock and things like that. So we're going to get that done. So let me just get the clips on all these and then I'll come back. All right, so the Presto is spurting a steady stream of steam, so we want this to happen for 10 minutes before we put the weight on it. This one I've just turned on so that we can warm up the water in the bottom. I put 4 quarts of water in this one just because it's a larger canner. So 4 quarts of water in the bottom, we're just warming that up to be the same temperature as the jars, and then we'll get those jars put in as well. So once this has been going for 10 minutes, which is another 6, then we'll put the weight on it and we'll start the time, and then we'll wait for the safety valve to pop up and we'll start the timer for 90 minutes. So just getting this one up to temperature to get the jars in. Jars look like this. So there's already a bit of liquid in the bottom that the chicken has been losing. So we're going to get them going as the same sort of a way. So once this water is warm enough that it's the same temperature as the jars, we'll get the jars in there. All right, so this water is the same temperature as the jars, so we're going to put the jars in here and we're going to get the lid on and we're going to get it started as well.
Really?
So we'll get this one going. Again, we'll take the temperature up not too fast because we don't want to siphon or anything, not too fast until it comes up and starts running its steam as well. All right, so the pressure has come up over 11 pounds and I've got a 15-pound weight on because I'm over 1,000 feet altitude. And now we have the weight dancing. I'm going to slow it down just slightly. It's tap dancing a bit too fast for me. I want it to slow dance, and then the timer starts for 90 minutes. Now, unfortunately, the weight for the buffalo has been misplaced and I can't run the buffalo at the same time. So I'm going to have to run this for 90 minutes and then I'm going to have to put the other lot of chicken in this and run it for 90 minutes as well. So I'll bring you back when this one's done. All right, it's going to be a late one tonight, which is what I expected with the lack of a second canner. So it is 5:45. This finished its 90-minute cycle, and then the pressure dropped down to 0 and the little valve dropped down, which means that there's no more pressure left in the canner. So now I need to open it and pull all the jars out. Now, so we're just going to get them all out of the canner. Now, in the meantime, I have I'll put this so that you can see it. In the meantime, the kitchen's a mess because the kids requested mac and cheese for dinner. So I've got cheese sauce made and pasta cooking for them for dinner. All right, so you can see that it's still under pressure in the jars, which is what all that movement is. So which is partly why the 24 hours for it sitting is so important, because it's still creating its seal. So these are going to sit aside. That's the 5, the ugly chicken, the unseasoned raw chicken. And now I'm going to add some cold water to that canner because I need to bring the temperature down a little bit to match with the jars, and put the other jars in and do the same process again. And then tonight, once that's done, I'll show you those coming out. And then I'll finish off the video in the morning. I'll open a jar of each and we'll use that for lunch / brunch, breakfast, whatever. And I'll let you have a look at them. So this was the first batch, getting the second batch started now. So it is late. My kitchen still hasn't been cleaned up properly. But it's, what is it? It is 8:30 and I'm getting these last of these jars out of the canner. So these ones are the marinated ones. Now, there is a very slight burn smell, which is what I was a bit worried about. And this is very, very dark. I don't know how well it's going to show, but I'm going to show you guys in the morning as well. So it may just be too much. We will see. Because flavors intensify so much in jars, it's completely possible that the flavor in this is just going to be too much. So I didn't overdo the marinade, but then you've got the cook-off in the cast iron pan, which is going to create some, you can see the color there, it's not too bad. And they're bubbling nicely in there. There's lots of liquid in there. So we will just have to see how we go. So we got 10 jars all up, 4 marinated, 4 not. I'll open one of each tomorrow and we'll use that for quesadillas for lunch or something. And we'll see how they look. So that's the jars. That was today's endeavours. I know it's bad lighting, but you can see the jars bubbling and stuff there. So anyway, I'm signing off for the night and I'm going to edit up what I've done, and then I'll finish the video in the morning, edit that up in the morning before I get it out. So this one's going to be out a bit later than normal, but these will sit here overnight to finish sealing up, and then we'll check them in the morning. Good morning. So it is the next morning. I'm in my daggy pajamas because it got down to 11 degrees overnight here last night. So this is what the jars look like. So we've got the plain, what they call ugly chicken, which looks like that. And you can see why they refer to it as ugly chicken. And this is the marinated stuff. So it has created a little bit less liquid. There is a bit of meat above the liquid line, which is fine. It's perfectly fine to be like that. None of our stuff is long-term storage either. So most of the stuff that I can, like all this chicken and stuff, is probably only going to be at a max 3 months on the shelf. And that's probably pushing it, because once it's cooked and on the shelf, everyone reaches for it. So it gets eaten pretty quickly, but it's still a good storage weight. Like, you know, there's still 10 meals here that were done and on the shelf. Easy meals of a night time for a kid to grab a jar of meat off the shelf and then add it to something to do. So next morning, all I do is I take all the clips off and I test the lids. So same as ball mason jars, we want to pick them up just by the lids, give them a shake, make sure that the lid is concave, which it is. If you put something flat over the top, you can see that it dips in the middle. They're pretty obvious on this size lid too. You can sort of see it. There's a sound difference as well to one that's sealed that's not. So all I do is I go through and I take all the clips off these. These get a rinse and put back, dried and put back into the container. And then the jars get a wash with some warm soapy water, because there is a little bit of grease on the outside of the jars. So you want to make sure that you give them a warm soapy water wash before putting them on the shelf, just so that nothing grows on the outside of the jars. Nothing can get in the jars because they're sealed properly, but things can grow on the outside of the jars, which is unpleasant as well. So we're just going to take all the clips off, double check that all the jars feel sealed. If there's any that aren't, they go straight in the fridge and they get eaten first up. Or today we're going to open up one of each anyway. But I generally don't have any problems with these jars with meat. They work really well with meat, which is why I like them. And I didn't have any problems with the canners. I took them up nice and slow. They ran the right time and everything else. So I don't envision having any that haven't sealed. Of course, once they go on the shelf, I do double check them as well regularly, because our shelves are in the open. So there is some significant temperature fluctuations in our storage, which isn't ideal. So I keep an eye on all my jars on my shelf anyway. Okay, so we've got a plain chicken thigh here. Now, to get the Fowler's jars open, you can get tools and stuff, and I have bought them, but I've broken them all. I find a butter knife is fine. All you need to do is get it up between the seal, gently, there we go, made a hiss, gently find a spot where it comes away, pop it up, and there you go. So this is what the ugly chicken, we got flies hanging around because of the smell of chicken. That's what the ugly chicken looks like. Let me pour it out into something. We're going to eat both of these today. So I'm just pouring them out for your benefit more than anything else. Because I could just stick them straight back in the, like the lid, clip the lid back on, stick it straight in the fridge. Now, you do get a fair bit of juice. All that liquid that comes from the cooking, that's come from chicken, so it's basically chicken broth. So what you can do is you can just pour that off and discard it if you don't want to use it in whatever you're using the chicken for, because if you're gonna pour this into a pan, you don't really want all that liquid if you want to crisp it up, and then that's how the chicken comes out. All right, so, and it just shreds into strings of pieces like shredded chicken, right? So that's the plain chicken. And then I'm going to put a lid on that one for to go in the fridge, because it's too early at the moment to do anything with, but I'm up because I want to get this video finished for today. So, and then here we have one of the marinated ones, and again we're just going to slide the knife up between the seal. You don't want to bend the lids, which is why I'm just doing it slowly in all the different spots, and there we go. So that's what it looks like there. So again, there's a fair bit of liquid. We've got a container here. So we've got a fair bit of liquid poured off. And then the meat. Now, it doesn't look anywhere near as dark as it looked last night. I was a bit concerned about burning with the marinade, but it doesn't look anywhere near as dark. And it doesn't smell burnt. So now if we pull this apart, have a look at it's definitely come away in more chunks rather than that shredding. Like, there's definitely a better texture to it. It's definitely firmer. It's definitely holding the shape of chicken better than the shredded chicken that falls apart. So that flash grilling has definitely helped the chicken hold its shape. Seasoning wise, I'm not hugely enamored on it. None of the sweetness of the cowboy candy comes through. It's very savory. It is seasoned, which is what we were after. But yeah, I don't know if that would be my choice of seasonings to continue to go with it. But that's the two there anyway. So the chunks of the thigh are definitely still... Let me bring you a bit closer so we're not going to drip this everywhere. Are still in chunks, unlike the stuff that's come into shreds. So there is definitely a difference between the two in the scope of how they've canned up. I'm going to get Darryl to give a go of them as well, and we'll see whether it's worth the effort, because like, this is simple, quick, easy, really simple. This takes an extra few steps, and is it worth it for it or not? That's the thing, but it gives you guys an idea anyway. So that is the two different types of chicken straight out of the jars. The rest of these will get washed and put on the shelf, and this I'm going to put lids on and put in the fridge, and we will eat them probably as quesadillas for lunch today. We'll do the shredded chicken and some cheese and stuff on toasted wraps or something for lunch today. So yeah. So I hope that was, you know, informative for people. I've got a lot of questions about the way that I do the canning and stuff, and I know that these canning videos don't always do real well, but it's fun to do the comparisons anyway, so it's good for me to have the comparisons, and I wanted to do that testing, and I'm just sharing it with you as well. I did notice how bad my kitchen looks all through this video when I was editing it last night. It's finally sunny today. Look, sunlight. But it has rained for like 2.5 weeks, and everything out here is just wet and gross. There's still like the ground still has puddles on it in my kitchen and everything else, and so there's been splashback on the sides of the barrels, and it's gross, and I'm so frustrated, but at the same time I still have to cook food. So as everyone can always see, my benches, cooking utensils and everything else are wiped down before I use them and sanitized and everything else, but the outside surroundings of where I'm standing, gross, and my camera angles on this video caught a lot of it, so we'll be, you know, that's life. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.